All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 93 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Bill at Super Duperflex. Bill, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Excited. Was happy for another week of chatting with you and this gentleman down below.
So, if you're listening to us on podcasts, we appreciate it. But hey, come by on the YouTubes. Just search for the DAP Network on YouTube. You'll find us. We're live every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, man, we got our man, our homie, our big dog, Drew Prawell at dr_pra. And he's only a doctor sometimes. Drew, how you doing, man?
I am good. Late to my own party here. I'm sorry, guys.
Late to your own party. And we're throwing this party. We're throwing this shindig, this extravaganza, because Bill and I, we're always trying to think of ways to make the timeline better, more entertaining, more informative, and in our thought processes, in our chats, we were like, man, why don't we have Drew on all the time? Actually, Bill came up with that idea, and then I just said, yeah, why didn't I? Because Bill's. If you haven't picked it up by now, Drew is going to be here every week with us, our permanent third host, not a third wheel, because honestly, he is way too good for that. And we hope you guys get excited about it. I know Bill and I are excited about it. Drew, every time he has stepped up for one of us, has just knocked it out of the park. And we just decided we should do that every week. Just have Drew knock it outside the park every week. So from now on, you will hear the three of us, and we are excited about it. Drew, is there anything you want to say?
I am so excited to join, and was thrilled that you all would even think to invite me to do something like this. So, no, I'm really grateful and humbled to be able to join you guys, and it's been so much fun joining the timeline chat and the listener league, and seeing the folks that we get to interact with day in and day out. So, more is better.
I agree with that 100%. And we're going to stop patting ourselves on the back now, and we're going to get into what we do best. And we're going to hit the news, but it's not really the news because, I guess it's the news. Week 1 of the preseason has come upon us. The NFL Network, in their infinite wisdom, just made Saturday preseason week 1 day. They started at 1:00 in the afternoon, and games weren't over until like 1:00 in the morning. It was just all day preseason madness. So here's the question. Here's what I want to ask: Is there a week 1 takeaway, a preseason week 1 takeaway that you kind of said, it could be about a team, about a player, about fantasy, whatever the case may be. Bill, why don't we have you go first?
So I was at a music festival with pretty much zero connection to the outside world this weekend, so I didn't see any games. The one thing though that happens every week 1 is people overreact to somebody that puts up monster stats. And so just as a generalization, it's like, or not even monster stats, like 1 catch for 80 yards and a touchdown, or, something like that. Maybe keep an eye on those players, see if they can do it for another week. Don't get too excited. I know you want to jump the gun and try to add players who popped a little bit, but the odds of hitting on any of these players from week 1 are pretty low. I mean, it took a week or two before, last year people were hitting on Robinson. It wasn't after week 1. It was most people were picking him up after like week 2 or 3. That's when we had 4 weeks, obviously. But so, I would say just don't get too overzealous dropping players that you like on your roster to add somebody that's, questionable to even make the team. I didn't really see much. I kind of, box score scouted, so I really don't have much input beyond that. But just tread lightly, I guess.
So you're telling me I shouldn't be drafting Quez Watkins wide receiver 1 in my redraft leagues? Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, I would say that, yes.
Okay.
Where I wouldn't be spending $75 of your fab on a dynasty.
Well, it's funny because this is the time of year where I start hearing from my brother-in-law. He plays strictly redraft, and this is when he kind of starts getting into it, is when preseason starts. He's an Eagles fan. And, he always texts me the funniest stuff, and he goes, man, Quez Watkins is the truth. Like, Quez Watkins is that dude. He's going to – and I'm laughing because I know he's kidding, but he has that tone of voice where everything he says sounds like he's saying it seriously, even if he's joking. So I'm just imagining that voice in my head while I'm reading it, and I'm just like, oh, man, Quez Watkins, that's just so funny. But so that's why I made the Quez Watkins reference, which, I mean, that might be a first on the fantasy timeline. So first episode with Drew as our new co-host, and first episode for Quez. So two elites right there. Drew, is there anything you picked out of week 1?
Nothing but confirmation bias. Watching Justin Fields makes me feel real happy about getting him in a bunch of rookie drafts this year. But like Bill was saying, context matters, right? You got full rosters, overloaded rosters with 30% of these guys aren't going to be playing week 1. So, keep that in mind as you go into it. But I would say as far as fantasy goes, I'm starting to see some trade offers pick up from people as they're getting excited about preseason training camp stuff. So I'm with Bill in terms of kind of pumping the brakes. And I told a couple of folks already, I'm willing to wait for 3-4 weeks. Let's see what shakes out, and even into the first couple of weeks of the NFL season to see what I've really got on a couple of rosters. So I've got some that look really, really good on paper that I hope pan out, and I've got some that look like they should be in full rebuild, but I'm not ready to move everything that I got right away either, just based on a few tweets or a few videos. So, but yeah, definitely excited to see Justin Fields get out and ball out a little bit, even if it was against third string guys. But just really happy to have it back, and just finished up the second episode of Hard Knocks, so it's preseason's in full swing, and I'm excited.
Yeah,
amen to that.
My takeaway isn't about a player or a team. It's more of a general assessment. Man, we in 2019 we were talking about how, man, preseason should be shortened to like 2 games, and then 2020 hit us in the mouth, and we had no preseason games. And now we're like, 2021 is here, and we're like, whoo, preseason week 1. I mean, even the NFL Network, like I mentioned earlier, picked up on that and put 4 games in a row on Saturday just because they knew people were going to sit there. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, it was his first NFL action, and Drew mentioned it earlier, Justin Fields and his, and, the day before that, it was Mac Jones, and, we know who, Mac Jones. And, let's just remember, we bagged on preseason football a couple years ago, but a lot of us, and even the Twitterverse, was buzzing about, Ramondre Stevenson breaking off a 91-yard touchdown, or, Drew mentioned, Justin Fields just hitting wide open tight ends for touchdowns, and, Mac Jones just surgically dissecting, I don't even remember who they played, but I know he was like 13 for 16 or 16 for 19, something like that. Like, I mean, the dude was just hitting everything. So, let's just enjoy this. We're watching a lot of guys, like Bill said, that they're not going to have jobs come week 1. They're going to be, on the street. Maybe another team takes a look at them, but most likely a lot of these guys are, going to go back to their normal lives and hope maybe an injury brings a phone call their way. But, that's the fun of it, man. And you get to see these stories. Drew mentioned Hard Knocks, which, they play up all those stories. Can the can the fourth string tight end make the team? He's got a bunch of heart and guts, and he's just, trying to live out a dream, or, the eighth offensive lineman is trying to do, we got all the stories on Hard Knocks, and, but let's just enjoy this, man. This is fun. Unfortunately, it's not going to be fun anymore for Tim Tebow. He got cut after, honestly, two of the worst blocks I've ever seen. Yeah, pour one out for our homie Tim Tebow. Let's a moment of silence. We'll Tebow it out, and then we'll move on. Boom, we did it. So, yeah, man, I'm just saying, let's have fun with this, because, yeah, the regular season's going to start, and then we're going to get real excited. But it was cool seeing the rookies come out there, especially with 5 rookie quarterbacks doing their thing. It was cool to see them out there and going at it. So now that we got, we did that, man, this is going to be fun, because this is the first time there were officially 3 of us doing the timeline. So let's do what we do and see what we saw on the timeline. Now this first one is from FTC member. And if you don't know what the FTC is, the Fantasy Timeline Chat, bunch of great people in there talking about everything under the sun. If you want to be a part of it, just either hit up the show handle or hit up any of our handles. You can see them on the screen. If not, you'll see them in the show description, and just say you want in, and we'll put you in. It's as easy as that. So this is from JR_FF at RunDFF, our man Justin Rogers, that network brother, and he asks a very interesting question, a question that I wanted to put on here because I thought it was cool. What feels worse, blowing your fab too early on a bust, or holding it too long and missing out on a stud? So this is a question, make you think. Would you rather blow that money early on somebody that maybe, like Bill said, maybe there was a bunch of preseason hype, or maybe there was a bunch of off-season conjecture that led you to spend that money, or wait too long, not spend the money, but maybe end up missing out on a James Robinson type player? So, Drew, why don't you go first in this thought exercise? Which side would you rather be on?
Oh, I'd rather spend way too early and not have them pan out and have a shot at having somebody pan out versus just sitting on my hand and watching somebody else be able to scoop someone up. Yeah, I would much rather use it and get it wrong than play it safe. I'm sure, depending on your roster build, different teams can play that differently. But in general, I want to get a free agent early that could give me a season's worth of dividends versus, think that I'm smart enough to wait till week 9, 10, 11 and try to hit the jackpot right before the playoffs or something like that.
Love it. What about you, Bill? Spend early or don't spend late?
So I agree with Drew. I think that's the right play. However, that is not how I usually play it. Like I'm usually the guy waiting. More times when I'm a contender, I already know I'm a contender, I might be willing to roll the dice and maybe hit somebody later in the season that I know is going to help me during the playoffs. That's the one. That's usually my thought process. If I'm if I'm pretty sure I'm not making the playoffs, I'd probably be more aggressive early on and hope to hit for a home run and that I can flip for additional, picks or something like that. So I think that it kind of, like Drew said, it does kind of matter on your roster. That it depends on your roster a little bit. And so I'm probably a little more aggressive earlier when my team's not good. But probably you should be doing that all the time, not just waiting, because there may never end up being anybody available to help you in the playoffs later in the season. So usually I would prefer to do the early, but I don't ever do it for whatever reason. So do what I say, not what I do.
So I hope later on in this episode there's a little bit more disagreement, because I'm gonna make it 3 for 3. But I'm also gonna put the Bill caveat on it, is that I think the smart play is to spend up early and maybe miss out. But I'm usually the guy that's hoarding fab at the week 8, week 9, week 10. I still have a bunch of fab. Now I will say I broke out of my cycle in one league, which is kind of an extreme type league. 16 team super flex. There's 30 roster spots plus a 10-man taxi league, so it's pretty much 40 spots per team in a 16-team league. So there's never anything on the waiver wire, and I spent 80% of my fab on Tyler Heineke, and I won him. I actually didn't think that bid was going to win, because I said, oh man, everyone sees that there's like maybe 4 guys worth spending fab on. But I did. I won him, and then I spent another 10% of my fab on Samaje Perine. So I spent 90% of my fab on Heineke and Perine. But I mean, it also all depends on your league. If you're in a super shallow league, maybe if you're in a 10-team league with 25 roster spots per team, maybe you can attack it a little differently because there's a little bit more to be had on the waiver wire. But yeah, I'm kind of like Bill. I don't normally spend early. I usually end the season with fab money because I ended up not spending it on anybody or getting outbid or whatever the case may be. So spend it early if there are guys out there that you can get, because like the saying goes, you can't take it with you when you're gone. So.
Well, thank goodness we have one smart analyst now.
Hey, I've been leaning on you this whole time. Come on, man. All right. So, Justin, thank you. Spend it early. It's not real money. Well, in most situations, it's not real money. So, spend it like you got it. So here's the next one. This is from Michael Reedy at Mike Reedy FF. Thoughts on Tua Tagovailoa? ADP in the 14th round, pick 160. The team added Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle, potential top 10 value. Tell me what you think. So I just wanted to throw out some ADPs real quick so that people are not confused here. So July DLF Superflex ADP has him at 36. He's QB 16 off the board. Fantasy Pros, one quarterback, his ADP is 149. That's redraft. And he is QB 20 off the board. So he's definitely, no matter how you crack it up, he is, midway QB2 to end of the QB2 pack. So I have some thoughts about Tua, but Bill, why don't you start us off? What do you think about Tua this year?
I think Tua's kind of ceiling is low end QB1. I think that I don't ever expect him to be battling for like a top 6 QB or anything like that. I figure like around QB 10 is probably his high. If he has a great season, maybe he can be a little bit better than that. But he's not shown me enough to make me believe that he's a QB1 or somebody I'm willing to take as a QB1 yet. I know there's hype. I know we get excited about adding, weapons, but we've seen this time and time again where teams add weapons and we get all excited about that quarterback and then they end up being Drew Lock. And so like same thing with Baker. Everybody went crazy for Baker and then this happened. It's every year there's some team that everybody, gets excited about because of all these weapons. And the quarterback hadn't shown yet that he was a high-end quarterback. So I'm just not going to get moved. Maybe he does make a great progression this year. I don't know, but I'm not banking on it. And I'm not going to go out of my way to add value to him just because of a few weapons that we're not even totally sold on. One that gets injured all the time and one that's never played it down in the NFL.
All right, Drew. So a sort of optimistic, pessimistic look at Tua, I guess.
I'm pessimistic.
All right, Drew. What are your thoughts on Tua time?
First and foremost, as a Bills fan, I hope he sucks. But as a dynasty manager who has him on a couple of rosters, I'm optimistic. I think the kid wins. He went to a big program, showed that he could win on the big stage there. He's got some weapons that he's familiar with now, which is great. So I think he's got an opportunity to push into the top 10. I agree with Bill. I don't think he'll contend for a top half of dynasty first round picks, but I'd be very happy with him as my QB2 because I think he could have QB1 weeks pretty often, depending on who they're playing and how he adapts. But I think some of the speculation has settled down from trades and going somewhere else and shaking things up again for him. So if he settles into Miami this year, and I think Miami overall has been doing a pretty good job with their front office getting players around him. I'm optimistic. So I think I'm probably a little higher than consensus on him. I'd like to have him, and he's one of those value picks that I'd love to have with like a Kirk Cousins. If I had those two in Superflex together, I'd feel pretty good about my quarterback room this year. And then hopefully that means I could assign some value elsewhere that I could be a little bit more aggressive, maybe at running back or wide receiver or something. But overall, I think I'm cautiously optimistic, but optimistic overall.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've gone on a little roller coaster ride with Tua. I started the off season, excuse me, and I said, man, I don't think I'm really in on Tua. He didn't look good last year. There were times where they were bringing Ryan Fitzpatrick back in once they started him, and it was kind of a mess. And kind of as the offseason proceeded, they signed Will Fuller. Then they draft Jalen Waddle with the 6th overall pick. They're not only drafting offensive linemen, but they just made a trade, I think it was today, with the Panthers. They picked up one of their former second-round picks, Greg Little, offensive tackle, and shot them a 7th. So from everything that's going on, it looks like the team is taking a smart approach here. They're trying to give Tua weapons to throw to. They're trying to protect Tua. So I'm higher on Tua now, but now so is everyone else. So I can't even, kind of make the low ball trades that I probably could have made earlier in the offseason when I was low on them to get them. I think we forget. We're supposed to be the dynasty guys, and I always say this, we're supposed to, remember everything and think long term and do all this stuff. And I think sometimes we're more short-term thinkers than even redraft players are. This dude was the surefire gonna be the number 1 overall pick. There was no doubt about it. He was the man. Tanking for Tua. That's what everybody in Miami said. We're tanking for Tua. And then he gets hurt. He messes up his hip, and Joe Burrow just has a historic season. He goes number 1. Miami still gets Tua. They should be happy. Hey, we got Tua. We thought we were going to have to tank to get him at 1, and we didn't have to. And he sat because he was still hurt. He was still recovering from an injury. And then finally the team says, all right, Tua, we're going to put you in. And everyone just thought he's just going to hit the ground running. No. I mean, he had a pretty bad hip injury. He was still not only getting back to 100% from that, but learning an NFL playbook and doing all these things. And I think we forgot about how good Tua was just a couple short years ago at Alabama when he was supposed to be the number 1 pick. They're putting weapons around him. They're putting offensive linemen around him. I think he's going to be pretty good. But I also think Bill is right. I think he is going to be in that low-end QB1 territory. QB 10, 11, 12, something like that. I think that's where he's always going to be. I think Bill is right. I don't think he's going to ever challenge for top 3 or top 5 or anything like that. I don't think so. But I think Miami is really trying to put a team around him that is going to allow him to hit his ceiling, which I think is that low end QB1. So yeah, I like him. Why not? Why don't we have a little Tua time down in Miami? Does he have potential top 10 value? Maybe 10, that's probably the ceiling is 10. But I mean, even if he's 12, if he's still a QB1 in your league, you know, if you didn't draft him and you traded for him, you probably traded a lot less than you would for any other top 12 quarterback that is going to end up there this year. So, hey, if you have an opportunity, if someone is still low on Tua, if you got a bill in your league, you know, maybe shoot him an offer and see if you can get a little bit of a discount on Tua.
Yeah, he's in a big tier of quarterbacks. So that whole group, you know, you take what comes to you. I do think they mismanaged him last year. I did feel bad about that. I felt bad for Fitz too. Fitz is probably a top 3 favorite quarterback of mine in my time of watching football. Love the guy. So I wish they'd given him a little bit more run last year when he was doing okay with them. And I think it could have been different if Tua had a consistent string of games at the end of the season that he could have really tried to settle in. But yeah, he's in that group where if he's the guy you like and you're at that point to take somebody in that tier, then go for it and take him. But he's not somebody that I'm going to take just because I think all the top tier quarterbacks are gone and now I need to take the next best thing.
Yeah, I don't think that, like, I mean, I'm probably not grabbing him before like QB 15 personally. Like, I mean, I'm okay that there might be a little upside there, but I'm not even expecting that. Like, if he ended up being QB 22, it wouldn't stun me. And, you know, it's just, I'm not saying I expect that, but I don't feel like there's a ton of upside on his end. So I'm just okay not taking him in redraft, especially. Like, there's just no reason I feel like I want to draft him. But I mean, like you said, I'm lower on him than you guys. I just don't feel like there's. I mean, I think he's just the hype guy this year, and I think people are going to be a little disappointed with him.
Well, and you said, you know, you're not going to grab him before 15, but even in Superflex, he's QB 16. So even though his ceiling might be QB 10, you're not. I mean, hopefully, you're not taking him at QB 10. You know what I mean? This is a guy that you can get probably anywhere from QB 16 to 20. And Drew's also right. I mean, there's probably a lot of guys in that territory. You know, you start bringing up, you know, maybe this is the Baker Mayfield year. You know, I think he's in that same group where it's like he could, you know, because we hear this too. He could be, you know, possibly top 10. You know, and there, you know, I agree with Drew. There's a lot of guys in that group that you're like, hey, maybe if, you know, things break right or they take a step forward, kind of like what Josh Allen did, but obviously not to like QB2, you know, then maybe they can be in that, you know, QB1 conversation.
Are you drafting Jalen Hurts or Tua in redraft?
You know the answer to this question. Why are you even asking me? Drew answer this because he knows my answer.
For redraft for this year, I'm taking Jalen Hurts. I'll take the running upside, and he's another one, right? I guess this is kind of the model too with young quarterbacks because they're so replaceable. Put everything around him, and if the guy doesn't work out at quarterback, you can replace him next year, and then you've still got a solid core of talent around them. So I don't put a whole lot of stock, I guess, in teams adding weapons as a huge boost for the quarterback. If anything, you know, we saw it with Drew Lock. We're seeing it with Hurts, with a couple other guys. There, you know, if they don't work out, fine, they'll move them, they'll cut them, and they'll be able to draft somebody in the next year or two, or trade for somebody that they think will be able to fit their system. But free draft this year, yeah, I'll take Jalen Hurts well before Tua. I will take Tua in redraft depending on how I'm building my team here, but I would say as early as 12 or 13. If I think, you know, all the QB1s are gone, I'd be fine depending on where I am in the draft order. If I think I'll miss out on him later, and if I'm, you know, further from the turn or something, because I think he does have that upside, and I'll take the shot there, especially if I can, you know, get some other guys earlier if I wait on QB1 a little bit or something like that.
Burrow or Tua?
Just answer that question first.
Either of you. Like, because Burrow's hurt, so like, I mean,
I would still go Burrow.
Yep, I think you have to based on what you saw last year. You know, excluding Jamar Chase coming, which I think only helps the team. Yeah, I think Burrow is solidly. His floor is somewhere in the top, probably 15 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, like, I think there's more guys higher up than.
All right, here's one.
Okay.
Justin Fields or Tua? Justin Fields probably not starting at least week 1, probably more like 2 or 3 weeks. So, and this is a good one for Drew because we know Drew loves Justin Fields. Loves. I mean, so do I. So Fields or Tua?
I have to take the guy that has NFL experience at this point, and who is the straightaway starter. So even though Fields could peak, and if his last 14 weeks outpaced Tua, that's still not a guarantee. So I think I love the guy. Dynasty, no way, but for a redraft this year, if they're both sitting there, and the first 13 quarterbacks are gone, I would take Tua before I'd take Fields at that point.
I think I'm the opposite.
Ooh. We just found out today, everyone, that Bill actually loves Justin Fields more than Drew.
It's just that I'm sort of indifferent to Tua. Like, I just feel like he's just another guy, and it's with a little ceiling. But there's so many other quarterbacks that are just another guy with ceiling, and so who's that guy that's going to hit that ceiling? I don't know. And what is the max that his ceiling will bring? Like, Tua's not going to be a guy that's going to get you 600 yards rushing, of course, right? Like, he's never been a huge runner. He's a scrambler, but he's not a big runner.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, I would much rather roll the dice on a quarterback that I take in round X that's not like a high pick that could give me monster numbers. And like, if he doesn't, I can chuck him to the side. It's like, I would totally rather shoot for ceiling there, I guess. So yeah, I would totally take Fields.
Yeah. So last Thursday, I was on Primetime Mock with a bunch of great guys. You could check them out on YouTube if you want. And we did a standard 1 QB redraft mock draft. So I actually took 2 quarterbacks in that draft, which isn't my usual strategy, but I was going for something different anyway because it was a mock. So I took Josh Allen in the 4th. Drew would be happy with that. And then in the very last round, in the 15th round, I said, you know what? I'm going to grab Justin Fields. I think the dude is going to explode once he starts, but I don't know when that's going to be. So I picked him up. Tua didn't get drafted. Actually, the last quarterback drafted is friend of the show with the very last pick, 15-12, Kirk Cousins. Yeah, Bill knew right away. Obviously this is a very pro Kirk Cousins podcast. We always will be because the dude is just a QB1 every year, no matter what you say about him. But yeah, like even in a situation like that, Jalen Hurts went in the 10th round. So just to put a kind of a idea around like in 1 QB, what the thought processes are between guys like Jalen Hurts and Tua, or Justin Fields and Tua. I could look up Burrow real quick while you guys talk and tell you where he went.
So, like, basically, last 2 rounds, I could not have drafted a quarterback and ended up with Kirk Cousins and Fields. And that's like to me, that's a proper, quarterback room and redraft. Like, you have a guy who is going to give you something, probably outkick his coverage, right? Like, his draft position, like, he's going to be a QB 11 or 12, but he's probably drafted QB 18. So I get that consistency, but then I have that other guy that could just be like a QB 8 for the games that he plays. And, that's pretty intriguing to me. And then you just load up on everything else. Like, that's that's, I think, how I'll be playing redraft this year.
And you know who you could have had that went the pick right before me? Joe Burrow. So you could have gotten Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow, or you could have gotten Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields. Honestly, the only quarterbacks that went in the last 2 rounds were Lance, Burrow, Fields, Deshaun Watson, and Kirk Cousins. Those were the quarterbacks that went in the last 2 rounds. So you could have even, if you wanted a real high upside lottery ticket, you could have, given yourself Watson in the last round and, booted him if, he ends up on the commissioner's exempt list or whatever with that situation. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun to see with Tua and Fields and Burrow, a lot of these guys, because Drew nailed it. There's this like kind of like blob after you get past like what, the top 12 probably, and it's just like, okay, who do
Probably
you
even
want?
less than that.
Who's your guy? Like who, because especially in Superflex, the first round is pretty much all the quarterbacks everybody likes. Like the first, you're going to get 8 or 9 quarterbacks in the first round. This year we've been seeing that. So, after that, it's kind of like, all right, like who are you going to go after in the second and following rounds, because those top 10 guys are probably going to be gone within the first 15 picks. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see Tua time and the rest of that crew. So, Mike, I'm with you. I think Tua does, can flash and can have some upside. And Bill and Drew kind of think that Tua is what he is. So, all right, let's hit this next one here from Ricky Gomez at Ricky_Gomez3. 10-team dynasty, half-point PPR Superflex. Elijah Moore or a 2022 first and second. So, Bill and I love Elijah Moore. We heart him. Drew, what are your feelings on Elijah Moore? And then you could tackle this question.
I was low key trying to see if you guys would trade him to me in the listener league, and I see that it's not going to happen. So, he for me, I think was, I got to go back and think here. Pre-rookie draft or pre-NFL draft, I think he was probably top 3 for me. Jamar Chase, he was the guy that I really, really wanted. Most of my rookie drafts for wide receiver. And then Devontae Smith and I can't even think of who else was up there, but Elijah Moore was the guy.
Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Bateman, depending on landing spot, I guess. Once he went to the Ravens, that kind of fizzled out for me. But Elijah Moore, I had him on a draft list that was pretty high. So I like him. I like the situation. I think he and Zach Wilson, hopefully, toward the end of the season next year, we'll start to click on some things. But I like him a lot. In a 10 team, I get that, you're looking at a top 10 pick and then whatever, top 20 pick with it. So that makes it a little bit more enticing. But I could probably flip a coin there. I think right now I'd still take the guy that I like, who's got a chance to be the number 1 on his team. I'm not real scared by Corey Davis or anybody else that's there. So I would probably lean, if I had to do this trade 10 times, 6 or 7 times, I'd take Elijah Moore.
Ooh. All right, Bill. Tell him what you're doing.
I like it. I like Drew and I aren't agreeing much the last few questions. So I think I love Elijah Moore. He's actually, I just looked it up. I only have 6 players rostered more than him. So like I have a lot of him, and I would totally make that trade. I would take the picks. I mean, it's a 10 team, so you're guaranteeing you're getting yourself a top 10 pick. Wide receivers, I mean, dime a dozen now. I mean, they really have to pop for me, for them to be worth a first and a second. So, like, that's kind of where I am. I would just much rather move that into something else that maybe I turn that into, a running back that falls to me or some other position, And so, yeah, I'm probably just the flip of what Drew said on that. Out of 10 trades, I'm probably making that trade to get Elijah Moore 3 or 4 times.
All right, so here's the good news, Drew. All Elijah Moore will cost you is a first and a second round pick in 2022. So it's on the table. Also, you were a big fan of Jamar Chase. Bill and I just happened to grab that dude too. So if you're interested, it's going to cost you more than a first and a second, because we have now established that Elijah Moore is worth a first and a second. So now that those preliminary trade talks have been started, let's get into the meat of this. I love Elijah Moore. I love him. I was slow to get to the love, we had kind of, we needed to go out on a few dates. We need to get to know each other, talk about things. But with Bill's help, I am now in full blown love with Elijah Moore, and I'm willing to say it. I don't care who knows. I'm trading him for that first and that second pick right there. Yeah, Bill nailed it. I really can't add anything to it because he hit all the points that I would have hit. A top 10 player, yes. We all know 2022 is not supposed to be good. It's going to be a bad rookie draft. Well, yeah, okay. We've heard that drafts are going to be good and then they end up bad, and then we hear that drafts are going to be bad and then they end up being, the draft was okay, And that first round pick in my greasy hands is probably getting traded for something else anyway. I'm probably not keeping that pick because unless I know my team is a dumpster fire, I'm trading that first for the running back that everyone loves that gets hurt. And that contending team needs to get some. All right, here's a first round pick. Give me that guy. Let's go. I'm not keeping that pick anyway. So yeah, give me them picks. Go ahead, Bill.
That's until Elijah Moore goes 6 for 90 this week and preseason 2. Then I'll be like all giddy about him and not want to move. And just because I didn't see any games last week, so. But no,
I got 2 seconds next year. 2 seconds right now.
He was hurt anyway, so you didn't miss any of the Elijah Moore highlights. But
1 second right now.
Bill left because he will never trade Elijah Moore.
Was that an offensive offer?
Yeah, that was an offensive offer. He dipped out because he did not want to hear your foolishness. Elijah Moore is worth, from Drew's mouth, a first and a second. We will take no less. And every day that this goes by, we're only asking for more. So you better get him now while the price is low before he turns into the next or maybe first great Jets wide receiver. So
yeah, Elijah Moore is like Bitcoin. It just keeps going up until it doesn't.
Right.
So,
which is fine.
It's either going to be 0 or it's going to be 5 first.
Doge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dogecoins.
Yeah, we got our own little crypto bank. His name is Elijah Moore, and we're gonna ride the trend until we either cash in big or we try to figure out why we spent $10,000 on Bitcoin. So there you go. We think you should, if given more Ricky, we think you should do it. If you have to pay that to get Elijah Moore, you might want to keep them picks for a little bit. So next one here is from 2 Utah at Steve Sanders 600. 12-team Superflex Dynasty. Which side? You got Aaron Jones or a 2022 first and Bill's all-time favorite player, Trey Sermon. So is it Aaron Jones or is it the first and Sermon? Bill, why don't
Josh, why don't you go first?
Oh, you want me to go first? I'm gonna say it. You know what I'm gonna say, right? Bill, do you know what I'm gonna say? Bill doesn't know what I'm gonna say. He knows that the myth and the legend of Trey Sermon has become so big, it has encompassed everything. But this is the classic. Are you a contender or are you a rebuilder? Because guess what? If I'm contending, you ain't getting Aaron Jones from me for that price. Aaron Jones is worth more to me on a contending team than a first and Trey Sermon. However, if my team is trash, and listen, I got a couple of those. I got a couple teams, they don't look so hot. Dude, Aaron Jones, you're like 27, I think, 28. You out. I'll take the first. Whatever. I'll trade Trey Sermon to somebody like Bill who loves him. And I'll reap the rewards. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, because you're dealing with a pick and a very young asset as compared to an older asset, I do feel like this is the classic are you a contender or are you a pretender type deal. Bill looks confused.
I'm
And
sorry.
he's muted. Go ahead.
No. I just saw where Miguel Cabrera hit a bomb to almost hit 500, but it fell short. So it just kind of stunned me. So what were we talking about?
Your boy Trey Sermon and a first, or Aaron Jones.
I think I'm taking Sermon in the first. Running backs are pretty, injury sensitive, and I'm okay rolling the dice on getting a running back in with hype that I could still flip. And let's say I flip them for, I don't know, Chris Carson plus. I'm totally fine. Then I just got a first and plus for Chris Carson, who's going to arguably do similar, at least in the range of Aaron Jones. So, like, that's a move I would totally make pretty much every time, just because I feel like I could do a lot better. Aaron Jones to me isn't that different than a lot of those older running backs that have performed. So, pretty easily taking the Sermon first.
All right.
9 out of 9 times.
It's only because Trey Sermon is on the other side. That's why. And actually, Bill talked about the Trey Sermon hype. I want to give Bill credit where credit is due. I think Bill started the Trey Sermon hype on this podcast. I think he was like the first one to show love to Trey Sermon.
I'm pretty sure you started the Sermon hype for me.
Well, no, because if I had started the hype, nobody would be drafting Trey Sermon right now. So it was definitely you. You said, I got love for him. He could get me 1,300 yards. And hey, you started it. So Bill is a trendsetter. I just wanted to give you your props, Bill. All right, Drew, go ahead. What do you got on this?
It's tough. I've got Aaron Jones in a couple spots. Unfortunately, it's him plus one other guy. So I don't know if I'm contending in those leagues. I probably want the safety of knowing that he should perform pretty well this year with Rodgers there. I think I lean toward Bill's side, though, where I could be convinced to take the Sermon in first. I think Sermon could equal Aaron Jones all said and done this year, or when it counts in the back half of the season. And then having that extra first certainly is a nice bonus to that. So, and I don't love the idea if Rodgers is gone next year, that totally deflates any value that Aaron Jones has then. So if this is an opportunity to get out and get solid value for Aaron Jones and possibly get the production anyways, I don't see why you don't.
There you go. So we got a lot of love for the first round pick and the Trey Sermon throw in there. So there you go. If you to Utah, if you're still mulling this over, the majority of us are very much on the Sermon side there. So this is going to be a good one, because we talked about being a pro Kirk Cousins podcast. We are also a pro Deontay Johnson podcast. So this is from Kevin Bear at Kevin Bear DN. What is the dynasty market value on Deontay Johnson? So here are the options he put out there. A mid 2021 first. I guess his 2021 draft hasn't happened yet. 1/6 through 1/9, 2 firsts, a first and second, or a 22 first. So I will throw it up in the air. One of you two guys catch it. Who do you want, and how much would you want to pay for him?
I can't quit Juju. I know this is this question was not asked in my interview process, so I'm glad. But I like Deontay fine. I've got him on a couple teams where either inherited him from an orphan team or I got him in an auction at a value last year. So I think the value of what I can get out of Juju, either for less in auction dollars or later in rounds, I'm fine with that. I would say if I'm looking to add him to my roster somewhere, I'm not giving up any more than a first at all. And that's, a mid to late So if it's this year and I'm looking at, where rookies are going, because my rookie draft is still coming up, I'm not giving a first this year. And again, I don't see any context here as far as what kind of league we're in, but if we're looking at like a 12-team Superflex, I'm not giving up a mid first for Deontay, I don't think. Honestly, I'd rather take Elijah Moore with a late first if I had it, or where we were getting him earlier in the season in the top half of the second round. I'd be fine taking Elijah Moore there and starting young again. So he's probably a 22 first at the most for me, depending on what I need for my team. And I'll live with it.
So hold on, Bill, before you say anything, because I just want to make sure I heard this right. You like Deontay fine? That's like saying you like a good steak just fine. Like bad steak is okay too. I mean, Juju's not like bad steak, but he's not Deontay. He's not that fine cut of meat that you only get at like premium establishments. Like
it depends on who the grill master is.
Listen, good steak is good steak.
Good steak can get burned just like anything else.
And bad steak, no matter how good you cook it, is bad steak.
Hey man, he's had time, but I'll toe the party line here. I like Deontay better than fine, but no, he's not something I'm going to give more than a first for. Unless I'm trying to think if there's a roster situation where I would give more than that, but I can't think of too many at this point.
We don't want your pity like for Deontay. Bill and I have the true and original love for Deontay, and we'll keep it in our heart. All right, Bill, what are you giving up for Deontay?
So I'm kind of in that same boat, honestly. Like, I mean, I love Deontay, right? Like, he's a guy I root for. He's a guy I have on a lot of my teams. At the same time, he's a wide receiver. So, like, I'm not going to be giving a lot for him because there's a lot of other players that are in that same tier. There's probably 20 guys that I'm totally fine having that are similar to him. Does he have maybe more upside because of the volume? Yes. So that's somebody that maybe I want early in that tier, but I'm not going to go above and beyond to add him over probably like a Robert Woods or somebody like that. Like there's a lot of guys that I could take later that I'm totally fine with or pay less for that I'm totally fine adding. So like, as much as I like him and I think he may do quite well this year, like there is still a lot of risk with him that if he has drops just as much as he did last year, we're going to see him not getting those targets because they're not going to feel, Ben's not going to feel comfortable pitching it to him. So like, that's just part of, there is risk in him as much as I like him. So I'm right there with Drew's value. Like, I'm not paying anything above a late first for him, but I'm not really paying for quarterback or for wide receivers. Like, there's just I don't need to like pay for those guys because there's just a million of them.
Yeah. So I personally, and a lot of people do ranks. I don't do ranks because I just feel like I would rather run my head into a wall personally. But because one of the biggest kind of questions in fantasy ranks is, where do you have the three Steelers receiver? Claypool, Deontay, and Juju. Like, who's first, who's second, who's third? They're always kind of grouped like within like a few picks of each other. I personally think that Deontay is going to be the best fantasy wide receiver for the Steelers this year. But you guys are right. And Bill has been, I always say Bill's a trendsetter. Bill has been banging this drum since the beginning. There are a million wide receivers out there. A million. Like, is Deontay Johnson that much different than Chase Claypool? Dynasty-wise, probably not. They're probably, Deontay's probably going to have the better year this year. And then, whenever the Big Ben experiment is over, if they can get a quarterback with a live arm that can kind of take advantage of his explosiveness, like he's going to take off. So, but like, there's a bunch of guys, it's the same thing kind of with the Cowboys situation. Like, do you want Amari or do you want CeeDee Lamb? And, we can start naming, The Bills have Stephon Diggs. Like, they're just wide receivers everywhere. So paying up for one is kind of like not something that I'm thinking about doing in a lot of situations, because honestly, I also know even if I went as QB heavy as you can possibly go and my wide receivers are not that good, I'm going to be able to trade for someone who, through the first 3 weeks stink out loud because everyone has wide receivers and they're like, well, Devonta Smith has been dealing with a knee thing. Okay, like, what do you want for him? Like, I can trade for that guy, whatever. There's a million guys. Tyler Boyd, even, talking about kind of three-headed wide receiver monsters. Like, everyone is down on Tyler Boyd. All right, a second for Tyler Boyd? Cool, let's do it. So they're easy to get and not pay a large amount for. If for some reason I needed Deontay on a team, I think, I'm going with the majority here. I'm going with that 22 first. I'll give you a future first. Have at it. If I am trading for a guy like Deontay, I better be like thinking about a championship and not thinking about like the 101 is going to be really nice on my team next year, because at that point I'm not doing it right if I am, trading him without expecting to go pretty deep in the fantasy playoffs.
But if you're going to do that, why not just go big and get one of those elite wide receivers? Like, why get a guy that you're not sure is going to separate himself? Like, pay 2 firsts for, one of those 10 guys that just get the monster volume. Like, that's where like the disconnect is sometimes with these values of these wide receivers. It's like, if I'm paying up for a guy I know is going to give me those points. Like, anything else, I don't know, right? Like, those guys are the guys that command volume. Like, Deontay's getting volume because he's in that position. He's playing the same position Antonio Brown played. That's his thing. I don't necessarily know it's his ability that's getting those targets. So Ben's used to throwing the ball to Antonio Brown. He knows where that position is going to be open on this play. And so that's the benefit. So I think it just doesn't make sense to pay anything above that unless if you really want him and you really believe he's going to get a ton of volume this year and he's not going to have the drops, totally go for it. Just, don't overpay for somebody like him, I guess. And so we're all of our values the same, regardless of how we got there. So
yeah. And I honestly, there's only one wide receiver that I can honestly think of off the top of my head that I'd be like, that's a guy I would pay for, just because I have been firmly in your camp since you started saying it. Wide receivers are everywhere. The one guy I would pay for, and it would obviously be a lot more than a first, would be CeeDee Lamb, because I think that this is kind of like the ground floor, unless obviously you drafted him. And I think he is just going to ascend into that like top 3 wide receiver area. But I mean, it doesn't have to be CeeDee Lamb in particular. I mean, everybody's going to have their own guy, but like my list is very short of wide receivers that I'm like, that I would break down the door to try to acquire, because yeah, great. I could get Deontay Johnson, but like Bill said, what if, because the big thing out of Steelers camp is, well, Ben's arm is really like 100% now, right? I think that's camp talk personally. But what if his arm really is 100%?
100% of what?
Of what it was,
Of 38 years old?
Hey, listen, nobody questions Tom Brady's 43-year-old arm. So, I mean, if it's 100% of Ben Roethlisberger's arm, Chase Claypool could really benefit instead of this like short passing game, 2 seconds and it's out of your hand type thing, which is where, like Bill said, Deontay is flourishing. And if there are more shots downfield, that, you're going to start taking advantage, like I said earlier, of what Chase Claypool has to offer. And then all of a sudden, whoops, I just spent a first on Deontay, but Chase Claypool's getting a little bit more of that target share. Or, Drew mentioned maybe Juju's still a thing, and then all of a sudden, here comes Juju. Whoop, I spent a first on the wrong Steelers wide receiver. Like I'm kind of with Bill. If you're gonna spend big, get yourself a stud, get yourself a Tyreek Hill. Get yourself one of those guys that can really go and put themselves in a top 5 conversation instead of a guy that top 15, top 20 conversation. I mean,
you want to pay second for Julio, or you want to pay a first for Deontay?
God, I don't want to do either.
No,
I mean, but my point is, like, the difference, right? Like,
yeah,
I would rather just pay for the guy that I feel could be still a top 10 wide receiver, because he's shown that he's been a stud his whole life. Like, I would rather for cheaper and, get that 1 year out of him, hopefully. I would rather roll the dice on him than to pay a first for Deontay personally.
And I think you could get more for the first, even if you're saying my absolute limit that I'm willing to spend on a wide receiver is a first. Like, I think you can get more than Deontay Johnson. And listen, I hear this all the time. Every league is its own marketplace, which is the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, you can get, Deontay Johnson for a first in this league, but Deontay Johnson only costs you 2 seconds in another. Like, it's what it is. It's timing. It's who owns the player. It's a whole host of things. But, I mean, I think you could get, in some leagues, I think you could get a guy like Allen Robinson for a first, or Keenan Allen for a first. And it's like, I would rather get one of those guys than Deontay. Yes, you know 100%. What I mean? And listen, I know people are going to hit up the DMs, and they're going to hit up the, when we promote the show tomorrow, and they're going to go, yeah, I could never get Allen Robinson for a first-round pick. But I see that trade go down all the time because people underrate Allen Robinson for whatever reason. And, that's what it is. Like, so I agree with you, Bill. If you're going to spend big at the wide receiver, because there are a bunch of guys that, all live, we talked about it with quarterbacks where there's like 10 or 15 guys in a blob. You bring it out to wide receiver, there's like 30 guys that are in a blob. And like, why pay a first for a guy that's just in a blob of other guys where, a bunch of them can finish in the same spot that Deontay Johnson can fit. So
yeah. For the Steelers wide receivers specifically, for me, it comes down to, all things aside, what are your league scoring settings, and who's the latest or the cheapest that you can get? And you combine those two factors for me with the Steelers wide receivers. I'll take the one that I can get the latest that fits whatever your league scoring settings are. If your league rewards big plays, then Claypool makes a lot of sense. If it's a full PPR or some sort of scoring for first downs, then Deontay makes a lot of sense. And for me, I think Juju's just a safe play for me in general, because he kind of flex to whatever league I'm in. So that's, I think, why I have an affinity for him across all the different leagues I've been a part of. But those are the two things that I'd look at for the Steelers specifically.
So I'll just tell you guys a funny story here on my way out, because I was talking about my brother-in-law earlier and about some of the stuff he texted me. He just texted me and said, without looking, do you know what team Tavon Austin is on? And he was shocked when I knew he was on the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Tavon Austin still doing some stuff. Apparently, camp reports is he could, make the team, as a special teamer mostly. But Tavon Austin has been in the league for a while. So, we like to shout out the random players. So Tavon Austin, congratulations for really capitalizing on Jeff Fisher's incompetence, because he took him with like a top 10 pick.
And paid him.
Hey, listen, pay that man his money. All right.
Hey, well, Hard Knocks boost.
Man, well, I remember there was the year he was on the Cowboys. Apparently, it was the Cowboys were one of the like last two or three teams that were being talked about going on Hard Knocks, and I forgot who they ended up losing out to. That might have been the Rams year actually that they were on. But anyway, um, and I was like, oh my god, people are gonna buy Tavon Austin if he's on Hard Knocks because they're gonna watch him run fast. They're gonna watch him, take back a kick return in practice or something, and everyone is gonna start paying second round picks for Tavon Austin. But it never materialized. But yeah, Tavon Austin is a Jag, just in case you're looking at your waiver wire and trying to find a Bill special, a guy that is getting some hype that you shouldn't be buying anyway, and get yourself some Tavon Austin if you feel the need. But
Less than Jag.
oh man, poor Tavon getting hate here. We love you, Tavon. Keep doing it in the NFL. Keep getting paychecks as long as people give them to you. On that note, it might be the end of episode 93, but it's the end of episode 1 with our new main man, Drew, as the third host. Drew, I want to personally thank you for coming on. I can already feel that the show is just gonna elevate with you on it, and I'm happy about that. So thank you for taking the full-time position. Your check is in the mail. And on that note, thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you. If you're watching, listening in podcast form, I mean, geez, an hour and 6 minutes. You could literally be doing anything else, and you decided to listen to three guys who just like to talk about fantasy football. So we appreciate that. Whether it's YouTube or it is in podcast form, hit subscribe on YouTube. We're at the DAP Network. Just search that and hit subscribe. You also get a whole bunch of other stuff with that, which is cool. If you're doing the podcast thing, please rate and review us. Apparently, there's some kind of top secret formula that will get us out to more people if you do that. So we would appreciate it. And on that note, Bill, we are out of here. You're muted.
Late.